We're the Limbs. My son, Justin, and my wife, Susan, and on Susan's lap is our daughter, Madeline, and across my shoulder here is Karis. When we first met, we were both physicians at the time, and we had both sensed a call from the Lord to be medical missionaries. We didn't really know much about Ethiopia, but it seemed like it was the right fit at the time. I was a plastic surgeon doing reconstructive surgery, and my wife is a pediatrician, and this particular hospital and organization wanted us to help start and run a new children's hospital to take care of plastic surgery problems, so it seemed like a good fit. The thing about cleft lip and palate is that if you do it well and you do it right, it pretty much looks normal.
After 6 months being in Ethiopia, I was able to return to the US mainly for a follow-up visit for my eye. During that visit, with that ocular CT, was diagnosed with this condition.
It's sort of this leakage of blood that could block the retina, which is what we need to see images through our eyes.
I remember calling Paul that day and saying, "Hi honey, happy anniversary. I have this eye condition, I need treatment."
It was something that she could get treated there in the US, had to get treated again for several months and had some complications with it, and this is a vision-threatening problem. To preserve her vision, she'd need to be treated and or seen monthly for some unknown period of time, which of course would be, I felt, impossible.
Paul just said, "We need to come back. We need to come back to the US." And that was just really hard.
No matter how we felt that what God was doing was right and good and for our good and not our harm.
It was a great opportunity to walk in faith because sometimes you're just given those opportunities.
And it wasn't something that was, this thing that came up with Susan's eye was not a surprise to him, and God wasn't just trying to play catch up, and so we knew that, but it was still difficult to translate that from our minds to our hearts.
And after a couple of years when things were stable with my eye, Paul and I, we've had a desire to expand our family, and our desire was to go through the expansion of our family through adoption. And as we considered the different ways you could adopt a child internationally, domestically, or by embryo adoption, we really wanted to go through embryo adoption.
And IVF means in vitro fertilization, so it just means conceiving a child outside the womb as opposed to fertilization in the womb. Years ago, this assisted reproductive technology was developed where children are conceived outside the womb, transferred inside a mother's womb, and then children were born, the test tube baby. Well, there's a lot of a lot of serious problems that have come up as a result of that.
What seems like a good thing, however, has really resulted in a lot of babies being created and destroyed, even in the process of trying to get the technology or trying to perfect IVF.
Because of this technology, there are perhaps 500,000 or 600,000 children that are unwanted, that are in a frozen state. So these are children that are conceived. They're children. They're not cells. They're children. Of those 500,000 or so, that probably represents a smaller number of children that have actually been killed. These are the ones that have been abandoned instead of killed. It's not very successful in terms of bringing a child to birth. So as a result of that, what the industry has done is they'll conceive many children, multiple children, say 10 children, and they will transfer 3 of them at a time, 2 or 3 of them at a time into a mother's womb. And they'll keep on doing this until they actually get a child that survives to birth. And then if you have any left over, then they'll say either discard them or donate them to science or donate them to some other couple.
Couples who go through this process, they might not have thought through kind of all the ethical dilemmas that might occur afterwards, such as the leftover babies.
It all sounds so very good, and it actually is really problematic for many reasons. So, for instance, They use the term embryo to describe these children. Well, embryo is simply a stage of development in stage of development in human beings. I'm a physician. Another term might be adult. Adult is a stage of development. Infancy is a stage of development. To say that a child is an embryo it's a scientific term of a stage of development, but it's really a euphemism that allows people to do horrible things, such as they use the term, you can discard your leftover embryos. So leftover embryos mean abandoned or leftover children. So you can discard them. What does that mean? That means you can murder them. So that's really what discarding means. When they say you can donate them to research, this is a particularly heinous euphemism because two reasons. One thing is you don't donate people, you donate objects. So you cannot donate a person, and yet they're dehumanizing or objectifying children. And then the other thing is donate implies a sacrificial good, and so when you're donating children, you're doing some very evil thing. So it's calling some terrible wickedness good, because what's going to happen to these children they're going to be experimented on, dismembered, and killed or murdered. That's not good. That's not a sacrificial good. We shouldn't feel good about it, and it's evil, and it's a terrible thing to deceive people, to tell them that they're doing good when they're doing wickedness. Some would say you're donating this special material in order for another couple to have the gift of life, or in order for this couple to reproduce. That's not true. Reproduction has already happened. There isn't a new life that's being formed. That life is there. It's like donating your prepubescent or donating your infant. You don't do that. They say, well, you can use your embryos. Parents don't use their children. Pimps and slave owners use children, but parents don't. Parents raise their children. So this is what's going on in the IVF industry. There's more to it than that. There's murdering going on of children in order to develop the techniques of IVF. So in and of itself, it's evil, and we shouldn't. And certainly those who believe that murder is wrong and murdering the most innocent people is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. There's this notion, and it's even in the language of many, that, well, I have a few of my own, and then I had an adopted child. I think Jesus in the gospel would say perhaps the adopted child is actually the real child.
I have learned to just love all my children as my own.
Again, it's those who are adopted in, that are chosen by God, not by birthright. Those are the ones that are the true children of Abraham. In the meantime, Susan was doing her usual follow-ups with her retinal specialist, and her eye had stabilized. This CNV had stabilized, so she was getting checkups every 2 months. And she mentions, she's planning on getting pregnant. I guess that's the term you would use. And what would happen? Could that affect her eye? And the retinal specialist said, well, we don't know if it could affect whether you're going to get it or not, but you wouldn't be able to get treated, because the treatment for this is something to kind of shrink up blood vessels. And so they don't, although there's no evidence for this about risk, but there's just assumed to be risk, because a child needs the mother's uterus to be creating blood vessels in order to survive. And so a medication that might reduce that would put the child at risk. So he said, we don't give it to pregnant women, so that's all. And so Susan said, oh, okay. So then we went along, and 3 weeks later received 2 children. It turns out only one of them survived the transfer, but within a week after the transfer, Susan started developing symptoms in her left eye, and that would be her good eye, because this was all in her right eye. So she goes and sees her retinal specialist, and he confirms that it probably is, but we can't do anything about it at this point. We can't get the medications because it turns out Madeline, our little daughter, is needing to survive, and that was very difficult. And it was a very difficult time. She was risking, her vision. Madeline survived and was born in November of 2013.
I was just so excited to see her, because I really didn't know who she was going to look like, because I don't have any pictures or records of her genetic parents.
He took us halfway around the world. He gave Susan this condition so that a little girl could be rescued from death, and she could be raised in a family where she's going to hear the gospel.
Seeing her face, seeing her hands and feet, just the beautiful creation and gift from God that she was to us. It was just tremendous.
God pulled some big strings to get her into this family and to be a part of our family.